Good morning, everyone. My name is Raef Mina, and today I'm going to be presenting you my project titled Fetal Exposure to Maternal Depression is Associated with Child Emotion Regulation Problems. So a bit of background here, we do know that the pregnancy period is characterized by increased vulnerability to the development of depressive symptoms. 20% of women experience depressive symptoms during pregnancy, with 10 to 15% of these women continue to exhibit these symptoms after giving birth. What we know about maternal depression is it can have a negative impact on the child development, which can occur through postnatal mechanisms such as the affected parent-child interaction and prenatal mechanisms. The prenatal mechanisms can be best explained by the fetal programming hypothesis, which states that the environmental factors can influence fetal development in utero during certain critical periods, which can lead to the long-lasting outcomes in the child's life. So environmental factors such as maternal diet, exposure to toxins, and maternal mental health. For example, previous literature suggests to us that prenatal depression is associated with child negative developmental outcomes, such as low birth weight, less responsiveness to stimulation, and delayed growth. Additionally, children born to depressed mothers show a more difficult temperament, characterized by increased irritability, frequent crying, and fearfulness, all characteristics of emotion regulation problems. So what is emotion regulation? Emotion regulation is a scale that aids children in controlling the intensity and duration of their emotions. And what we do know is that there's an association between emotion regulation and the kind of temperament that childs have. For example, negative affectivity in children can cause impairments in child emotion regulations. And to measure emotion regulation problems, we chose to observe temper tantrum behaviors. And this provides us with insight on emotion regulation problems in children. The objective of the study was to examine the association between fetal exposure to prenatal depression and child emotion regulation problems at 3 years of age through the mediation of postnatal depression and child temperaments. So participants were part of the APRIN study, and we've had 964 participants with which we were able to display the demographics right here. So for example, 88% of participants were white, 84% of participants belonged to a higher socioeconomic class, and so forth as presented in the table. And participants reported on multiple domains such as their mental health during pregnancy, child temperament, and their temper tantrums. So prenatal depression was measured during pregnancy using the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. Postnatal depression was measured with the same questionnaire. Child temperament was measured at 1 year of age using the Infant Behavior Questionnaire. And lastly, the child temper tantrums was measured using the Temper Tantrum Questionnaire at 3 years of age, which measured the temper tantrums frequency and duration. A mediation analysis was also conducting uses process macro to examine the association between prenatal depression and child temper tantrums and the role of the mediators in that association. So what we found that postnatal depression and child negative affectivity are mediators. We see that with increased prenatal depression, we see increased postnatal depression, which leads to increased child negative affectivity, and that leads to the increase in temper tantrums. We also were able to uncover a direct effect of exposure to prenatal depression or child temper tantrums. Another temperament dimension was here in the second model. So we see that with the increased exposure to prenatal depression, we see an increased postnatal depression symptoms. And this is associated with a decrease in child regulatory capacity or the child's ability to control themselves. And that in turn leads to the increase of child's temper tantrums. And the conclusions we can draw from this is that the direct association between prenatal depression and temper tantrums may indicate a biological pathway that is associated with the emotion regulation problems because they're independent of the mediator's presence. And the indirect association between prenatal depression and temper tantrums occurs through the mediation of postnatal depression and child's difficult temperament. And the last conclusion is that future studies could focus on making the sample more diverse in order to increase the external validity and generalize the results on more cultures. And that's it. Thank you so much.